Welcome back into CyHawk Talk here on a Sunday. Ben is back after a bit of a hiatus. He was in Jack Trice for the first loss of the season for the Cyclones. Ben, how do you think people are handling the tough outcome in the rainy weather?
It was a lot of disappointment from definitely at least the guys in the locker room. The fans, the fan base, I don't think is that truly disappointed because they kind of realized that this season has been a special ride. Um, I think Iowa State fans are always waiting for the other shoe to drop. So I don't know how many Iowa State fans are up in flames or nobody's grabbing the pitchforks yet. But for the people who really matter how it feels, the guys in the locker room we talked to, a lot of disappointment. 23-22 loss in Jack Trice Stadium. And I think it's disappointment because the Cyclones beat themselves, Ethan. Season high 8 penalties, turnovers, a fumble, and an interception. Fourth down, not great. Third down, not great. Scoring touchdowns in the red zone, not great. When you look back at it, the Cyclones were doing more giving away than the Texas Tech Red Raiders were doing taking it.
Yeah, I saw that bold in your takeaways that the loss was self-inflicted. You also mentioned maybe getting a little too comfortable playing from behind. What have you kind of seen in terms of that trend this year for the Cyclones?
It's the weirdest thing. I don't know what to make of it, Ethan, because Iowa State right now has the Big 12's top scoring defense in the conference, and they've been great. They've been so solid, except on the first drive of the game for the opponent. The last four opponents for Iowa State have gone down the field on their first possession and scored a touchdown, dating back to Baylor. And it was kind of like, what's up here? And now I think it's a trend where we ask guys what's going on, and they say it's a mentality thing, which I don't know. That's tough to coach. That's tough to fix. It's just kind of a concerning trend, I think, for Iowa State fans who have gotten used to from playing behind, and it finally came back to bite them. Malik said it takes kind of the air out of the stadium when you get behind, and it's certainly not a situation that you want to be in a lot.
And then looking at maybe the ramifications of the loss. First college football playoff rankings comes out on Tuesday. If you are undefeated, you're probably feeling pretty good about being inside that field of 12 in the inaugural playoff show. On maybe not feeling very good at this point right now. We'll get to your playoff-ometer in a minute, but kind of where do you feel like the temperature's at in terms of where they're going to end up ranked?
It's a good question, Ethan, because we've always been going off of the AP poll. And on Tuesday, the AP poll becomes completely irrelevant. But for what it's worth, the Cyclones got dropped down 6 spots to number 17 in the AP poll this week. And I don't know. I think that's about right. They kind of got some help this week. I think 5 other ranked teams also lost. And you kind of have to be in that top 13 if you want to make the college football playoff. And I don't know. It's going to be Cyclones are going to have to do something to get up there. They're going to have to prove why. But I'm interested to see where the committee thinks. Is there's going to be some recency bias in it with the Cyclones losing their first game just a few days before the ranking comes out? Or are the Cyclones going to have a higher perceived value by the committee than the AP poll voters? I'm interested to see how it works.
Yeah, I think that they might. I guess depending on the SEC bias and the Big Ten bias that goes on, I think there's a chance that Iowa State's maybe going to get a little bit more respect in that poll than maybe the AP poll, given that Iowa State just had negative poll momentum in the Associated Press poll coming into the loss. They dropped 2 straight weeks despite a win and a bye, and then they lose. So then it's like, okay, now they're just gonna. It's like you tied a millstone around their neck and threw them in the ocean. They're going down after that loss. So I just think that the college football playoff poll might have a little bit more of a clear eyed approach to it. Might try and set up a bigger Big 12 title game as well. They like to chase storylines. So I'm sure that Iowa State could get a little bit of help in that as well.
Yeah, the storyline everyone was kind of kicking around in the press box and after the game, Ethan was I wouldn't count out Colorado. You know, they're also sitting at 4-1 in the Big 12, tied right now with Iowa State. I wouldn't count out Deion Sanders quite yet. I really wish that those two teams were playing this season, just because that'd be a great matchup, and just Deion Sanders coming to Ames, Iowa would be a lot of fun, but sadly not the case.
Yeah, the Colorado that lost to Nebraska, who just lost to UCLA, who before yesterday had 2 wins. I don't know if I necessarily believe in that Colorado, but I'll let you peddle that a little bit if you want.
Well, I mean, Dion would call you out. I won't call you out for being a hater, but
I'm not
Dion's
being a hater. I'm just pointing out the fact that they lost to Nebraska, who stinks now. So
tell me about the Iowa Hawkeyes. I'm excited to hear about Brendan Sullivan. What'd you see from the quarterback, the new guy, the young guy, and a dominant win?
I'm gonna say something that sounds kind of like I'm being a hater, but I'm not trying to be a hater. Like there were flashes. Like he had a run where he made two guys miss. Actually made the first defender touch grass. Like he broke his ankles, left him on the 40-yard line in Kinnick Stadium. So there were like these flashes where I was like, oh, that was really good. He had a 52-yard pitch and catch to tight end Zach Ortworth. It's the longest pass for the Hawkeyes all season. So he had these great moments, but I don't want to sound like a hater because I don't like I'm not trying to be biased about it. I'm just trying to evaluate it, and it's like it was a solid debut for Brendan Sullivan, but it wasn't spectacular. Like I think he did enough that he should get the start next week if Cade McNamara is healthy or whenever McNamara comes back from this concussion general soreness injury that's kind of murky and the timeline's all weird about it. Whenever he comes back from that, I think Sullivan showed enough against Wisconsin that he should get the start moving forward. But it wasn't like a revelation under center. Like I just think that that shows you maybe how poor McNamara had been playing this year. That it didn't take this superstar to come in to lead them to a ton of success. It just was like this guy is doing everything on time. He's making the right decisions and he's being efficient. He's got no turnovers at all this season. He's 11 for 11 in the red zone when he comes in his goal line situations. So he's just like solid. Like he's dependable. He's consistent, and that should be enough to remain the starter. But it's not like he's going to win the Heisman. They have another guy in the backfield that probably should be getting a lot of discussion for the Heisman. I think he's getting in that conversation. He's kind of breaking through now, but Sullivan, solid, not spectacular.
Yeah, and I mean, we'd kind of said, oh, Ashton Genty's running away with this thing. Not so much anymore. The running back from Boise State's kind of slowed down a little bit, opening up perhaps a lane to New York for Kaleb Johnson, who ran behind an offensive line that controlled the line of scrimmage. That was one of your observations.
Yeah, it just seemed like Johnson, when he got to where the line, like they were resetting the line of scrimmage really well. So there would be the snap of the ball, and they would push him back, the Badgers back 2 yards. And so by the time Johnson made it to the new line of scrimmage, he'd already gained 2 yards. And then he'd make a guy miss, he'd find the hole or whatever, and he'd end up scooting untouched for a 16-yard touchdown or whatever he was doing. But they could have just gotten to the line of scrimmage and fallen down, the new line of scrimmage and fallen down, and there would have been a gain there. So the offensive line was doing a really good job just beating the Badgers back and creating those running lanes for not only Kaleb Johnson, but Jasmine Patterson, Kamari Moulton, and Brendan Sullivan as well when he would keep it on a designed run. So I was just really impressed with the offensive line. Really, Iowa won the trenches on both sides of the ball. I felt like the Badgers' offensive line looked completely overmatched and was a big reason why they only scored 3 points until the game was out of hand and they got that late touchdown. So I just think it was an absolute master class from the Hawkeyes this weekend, how to win in the Big Ten. They ran the ball really well and they controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So it was a really impressive win from both lines.
Coming from the guy who wrote the book on how to win in the Big Ten, you certainly
Wrote
know.
an article on how to win in the Big Ten. Kirk Ferentz could write the book.
That's probably true. You could write the forward for Kirk Ferentz's book,
There we
perhaps.
go.
I think just the last thing on this Iowa game, Ethan, is it's such a complete domination. You had notes on the coaching, the defense, and the punting. Where do you want to take it with kind of just the completeness of this Iowa win?
Yeah, this might sound like another like hot take with like the Brendan Sullivan one. I've written about the punting a couple of times now, but I'm starting to think that Rhys Dakin might be better than Tory Taylor. Not right now. Like if you put them both on the field together, Tory Taylor is probably going to outpunt Rhys Dakin. That's why he's in the NFL, and Rhys is a freshman in college. But if you compare where Rhys is at this point in his career to where Tory Taylor was at the same point in his career, where he was winning first team all Big Ten honors as a freshman, Rhys is better. He's averaging more yards per punt by zero point 0.7 yards. So like we're splitting hairs here, but we've really seen Dakin come into his own. He's just absolutely pinning teams back. We saw him do it to Northwestern where he pins the Wildcats inside their own 10-yard line 4 times in the first half, and they basically can't do anything. Did the same thing to Wisconsin this weekend. He had punts of 57, 54, and 49. So his average on the year is 44.8. He definitely bumped it up after this last game, considering his average was in the 50s, and he had one inside the 20, which was down at the 6. So I don't mean to be reactionary or hot takey with this, but I think Rhys is really good, and I think he should. I think he's carrying on the baton from Tory Taylor really well. The Australian punting connection to Iowa City is very strong, and I think that for the next 3-4 years, Iowa's punting game is going to be the class of the Big Ten or remain the class of the Big Ten.
I don't think you could have made Iowa fans any happier with another sentence than that.
Yeah, I mean they say punting is winning. Right now, it seems like running the ball is winning. I'll get to the one other takeaway. Tim Lester's riding the hot hand really well. He said he was going to do that before the year. He said he was going to do that after the Minnesota win when we got him during the bye week. He's like, I'm going to ride the hot hand. I'm not married to just running the ball or airing the ball out 60 times. I'm going to ride the hot hand. That's Kaleb Johnson. That's the ground game. He's doing it to great success. I mean, they threw the ball 10 times yesterday and they won. They won going away. So Tim Lester's doing a great job, and they're number 4 in the Big Ten in points per game. So you can't complain with that.
Not at all.
We'll go ahead and get into the playoff-ometer for the Cyclones and the quarterback spectrum for the Hawkeyes up next. We'll be right back. Welcome back to CyHawk Talk. We've got the playoff-ometer. Might be the first time we see some bad movement for the Cyclones, but I'll go ahead and let Ben take it away. Ben, where are you landing on the ometer today?
The ometer. It's gonna go down, right? You can't have a loss and not go down on the playoff ometer. I'm moving the Cyclones back to the eyeballs because I'm gonna be watching on Tuesday when the initial college football playoff rankings are revealed. Forget the AP poll. Forget all the bias and the momentum and everything about that. College football playoff poll is the only thing that matters. And Cyclones have 2 ways to get in. Win the Big 12 championship game, still a very real possibility. That helps because while the Cyclones struggled on Saturday, so did Kansas State. So that's another way the Cyclones can get in the Big 12 championship. And an at-large bid remains alive. Cyclones might need some help in that regard, but if you win out, I think there's a very good chance the Cyclones could even get that at-large bid. We'll have to see, but I'm going to be watching. I'm going to give them the eyes.
I don't know. Does an 11-2 Iowa State team with losses in the Big 12 championship game into Texas Tech, does that team get in? I feel like it depends on whether or not they lose in the Big 12 championship game to a team that they beat in the regular season. Where do you fall on an 11-2 Big 12 runner-up Iowa State?
It's a good observation. I think if you beat an undefeated BYU team, that at that point would probably be, I mean, BYU's 9 in the AP poll today. If BYU runs the table, you'd have to imagine they could possibly even be knocking on the door of a top 5 team. And I don't know, maybe they give Iowa State that number 11 ranking. You have to maybe anticipate the group of 5, person in the college football playoff not being in that top 12. So you have to get in the top 11 if you want to make the at-large college football playoff. And a loss against a top 5 BYU team might do it.
Looking at the Hawkeyes, we've discussed that there is no playoff-ometer anymore. They have 3 losses, and they look great right now. They've looked great in the last 2 weeks, but there are no hopes for the playoff. Iowa or Indiana and Oregon look like they're headed towards a matchup in the Big Ten title game. And so there's not really a path to Iowa to like sneak into the playoff with an automatic bid or anything like that. So we'll go ahead and do the quarterback spectrum. Are we more McNamara or more Sullivan? Who do we think is going to be the quarterback? That's the new question. And as we look at this new meter, this new gauge of Hawkeye Nation, I think it's going to be trending towards Sullivan. He's got the start for right now. If 0 is McNamara and 100 on this scale is Sullivan, I think we're at like a 65. So we're like just into the territory of Sullivan. I think it's trending that direction. Just the way that Ferentz has talked about the injury and the situation on Tuesday after the Northwestern win. I don't think it's Sullivan's job to lose necessarily. I think that there is a world where we wake up on Monday tomorrow and McNamara is back at the top of the depth chart. That would be there would be fires and there would be gnashing of teeth. There'd be just all sorts of anarchy in Iowa City, but I think that's a possible world that we could live in. So that's where we're landing on the QB spectrum. Hopefully, we don't immediately ruin this segment with something next week, but we'll see.
Appreciate everybody joining us for the Sunday rewind of CyHawk Talk. We'll be back with our midweek episode coming up next.